Hello, everybody, and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Denver. This is Gabby Sparks, joined by Luis Scott Vargas, and we're moving into round 11 now. Both these players are currently 8-1-1, and this is Christian Castro versus Bobby Fortinelli. This is going to be Black-Green Delirium versus Blue-Black Summonings. And as you said, just give us a quick breakdown of what you can expect in this matchup.
So the Black-Green Delirium deck, we've seen it operate in the feature match before, and it's the game plan of, control the game with removal, pressure your opponent with Grimflare, stock your graveyard, and eventually Emrakul. That is generally what this deck is trying to do, and I think that this matchup, that doesn't change that. The Metallurgic Summonings deck, that's a slightly different one. This is a blue-black deck that is essentially trying to finish the game with Metallurgic Summonings or Torrential Gearhulk, and every other card in the deck is a spell. So you've got tons of instants and sorceries that keep triggering Metallurgic Summonings and make your Gearhulks better. So it's a pretty sweet take on blue-black control, since it is ultimately a control deck, but at the end of the day, it's trying to finish the game with a somewhat unique card.
How often would you activate the second side of Metallurgic Summonings, you think?
I haven't seen that be relevant before, but it does seem possible in like a really long, drawn-out game. The problem is, if you have 6 tokens from Metallurgic Summonings in play, you're like probably doing pretty well. But I could see a situation where you made those tokens, and then your opponent, plays like a sweeper or plays, like a flashback Kozilek's Return or Fumigate, and then you want to pick up a bunch of gas to finish off the game.
So it looks like Christian is off to exactly the kind of start he wants here. Grimflare into cracking that Vestal Nascency and Delirium on the Flare as well. So this does drop Bobby down to 16. Now let's see what he wants to do with this Grimflare connecting. Looks like the choices are Emrakul, Ishkana, and Liliana.
All sorts of Delirium enablers and giant creatures to grapple with.
Yep, so those creatures are going to the graveyard, and Liliana's going to stay on top. Fun fact about Christian, he's actually been playing for 15 years. He top baited his first PTQ, and these are old school PTQs, when he was 13.
Wow.
The Ruinous Path is going to take down that Grimflare.
And Bobby really just wants to keep the board clear. If he can make it so he's not pressured and you can just resolve his summonings, the green-black deck has no main deck way to deal with summonings, and even in the sideboard has... Yeah, it actually does not. Natural State, doesn't kill it, so maybe one Appetite for the Unnatural is really the only way to actually get Metallurgic Summonings off the board.
Liliana coming down and taking down immediately. This is going to get Christian back a Grimflare. He makes a land drop and a pass back to Bobby. Bobby with just a land and pass. So how aggressive do you think the Black-Green Delirium should be in this matchup? Usually Black-Green Delirium is not the aggressor.
Yeah, usually Black-Green Delirium is the control deck, but in this matchup, Bobby will eventually resolve a summonings, and that's going to make things a lot more difficult. Emrakul is a trump card. I mean, Emrakul is a great card, but given how many counterspells Bobby has in his deck, if Christian plays Emrakul and then it gets Confirmed Suspicions or Spell Shriveled, even the Emrakul turn won't necessarily win Christian the game. So I definitely could see Christian needing to try to finish the game before Bobby's engine starts to take into effect.
Well, the Tireless Tracker did get Spell Shriveled, and away it goes, but here comes the Grimflare that we already knew about because of that Liliana.
This is the turn. Let's see if Bobby can slam a summonings here.
It does give him, Christian a window to resolve something big next turn. I think he does have a Confirmed Suspicions in his hand, though. That
would be sweet. I mean, we've seen that in a variety of decks over the course of this weekend. It's usually like a one-of. It's actually a one-of here as well. Confirmed Suspicions is just a very powerful card, if a little slow. Or maybe a lot of slow. It's a 5-mana counterspell.
I was going to say, a little slow is very generous because this is a very slow counterspell.
You have to pay 6 more mana in order to really crack all the clues.
So what decks are interested in playing something like clearly this one is, but aside from this?
Basically, any Torrential Gearhulk deck, there's a possibility it might want Confirmed Suspicions. And we've seen it in Blue-Red, we've seen it in Jeskai, and we now see it in Blue-Black.
So that Grimflare does get to connect. Christian keeps some cards on top. Continuing to take up with the land, and he doesn't actually do anything this turn, so see if Bobby has anything to do before that happens. Yeah, so it's going to Glimmer a Genius.
So this is a really classic synergy. You've got a 5-mana counterspell. Your opponent doesn't play into it, so you play your 4-mana draw spell. And Glimmer of Genius, as the best instant speed card draw in the format, is really making it possible to build these control decks. Without Glimmer of Genius, I don't think these control decks would be functional.
Yeah, that's fair. So Bobby did not actually like either of those cards, bought them both, and drew from the top.
It's kind of like a draw 4-ish.
Ish.
When you are looking for a specific card and don't care about anything else, it essentially is a draw 4. But when you'd rather, of course, you'd be able to hit land drops and draw spells, whereas, Bobby might be scrying lands to the bottom looking for spells. So Glimmer is a very powerful card. It's no Sphinx's Revelation, though.
All right, so Grimflayer attempting to get in, but let's see what happens to him. A murder, and away he goes.
So Grimflayer both times got one hit in and then died, which is not too bad for Christian. I mean, if you get a hit in with Grimflayer, you get a little bit of a card advantage or card quality boost and fill your graveyard. So not a terrible exchange.
The flares were large as well, so dropping Bobby down to 12 is... Oh, and there you go. He also has a spell shrivel. So how much of this deck is just counter spells?
There's 4 spell shrivels,
Okay.
a negate, and confirm suspicion. So he's actually drawn, 2 of the 6 counter spells already, but so it's not that got tons more. But it is a deck that is capable of countering a lot of spells, especially once you start drawing Torrential Gearhulk to flash them back.
All right, so Christian's going to return that Ishkana back to hand and pass back to Bobby. How important would a Liliana ultimate be? Because Christian continues to use this Liliana as a card draw engine.
I think the reason that Christian is not taking Liliana up towards ultimate is the presence of Ruinous Path in Bobby's deck.
Sure.
And Bobby actually has one in hand and is just choosing not to target Liliana. Christian's just content getting a card advantage and using Liliana as a minus engine, because if he starts going up to ultimate and then she dies the turn that she would have ultimated, then you ended up just trading 1 point and getting no advantage.
Mm-hmm. Well, Christian drew a very nice one this time. Transgress the Mind.
Yeah, that is a fantastic draw because it really clears the way for Christian to resolve something here, because sure, Bobby can cast Confirm Suspicions, but then Christian, if he's got an untapped land, can resolve an Ishkana.
Yep, and there it is. Confirm Suspicions, counters a Transgress, 3 clues for Bobby, and now Christian has a window. Do you have an untapped land? Oh, he doesn't. Grapple with a pass.
And sure, that can pick up a Grimflayer and Christian can play it this turn, but that's just not the spell you want to resolve. I mean, Ishkana, that's a reward. Grimflayer probably just trades for a removal spell straight up.
Yep, and so he is able to resolve the Grimflayer, but missing on that window to potentially resolve that Ishkana with Delirium too.
Yeah, and Bobby has to feel like he got away with something there. I mean, he resolved the Confirmed Suspicions and then really wasn't punished for tapping out, so that was a pretty good turn for him. He would like to see a Metallurgic Summonings, though. I think that would help here.
How often does this deck take a turn off to play Metallurgic Summonings if it's a control? Because you have to tap out for it mostly, right? Or are you trying to play it later in the game?
I think it's really matchup dependent. If you're dying and you have to play removal spells, you have to play removal spells. If the board is relatively clear, this deck really has a huge incentive to resolve the Summonings first, because its spells just do so much more once Summonings is active. Looks like Bobby is about to pick up a little more info himself here.
It does look like there's a Transgress the Mind there as well. Yep, indeed. So Ruinous Path and 2 Ishkana.
Well, the second Ishkana means that even if Bobby takes one, Christian has a good shot of resolving Ishkana next turn, because I believe Bobby's out of counterspells at this point.
If you're Christian, do you feel like you're at a point where you want to just start slamming into them? Like almost everything he's done's been countered so far,
I think that Christian's going to be forced to do that, even if he fears another counterspell, though. And I guess in this case Bobby did tap out, but even if he feared a counterspell, I think he would probably get to the point where if he's got no other threats going, he doesn't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, so he does use that Ruinous Path to take down the Grimflayer, and now Christian taking that opportunity. Here comes Ishkana, along with 3 spiders. Liliana takes up. And then we're going to see a pass back. Bobby anticipating at the end of the turn.
And one thing that the Metallurgic Summonings doesn't have access to is sweepers. There's just no good, like, big black sweeper in this format right now. There's no, like, languish type effect or mutilate. So there's no real simple way to deal with Ishkana and her brood with one card. I mean, Bobby can string together, like, Torrential Gearhulk, Murder Your Ishkana. You're in pretty good shape, but there's no easy outs here.
Bobby plays 4 Metallurgic Summonings, right?
Plays 3, actually.
3? Okay.
So even though it's a crucial card for the deck, I think his deck is built controlling enough that it can win games without summonings, though. Right now, he's done a lot of 1-for-1 trades, and Confirmed Suspicions will eventually materialize into a 3-for-1, but that's still, or 4-for-1 even, but that's still not going to get the job done without a summonings at some point.
All right, so the whole family of Spider gets in. This drops Bobby down to 6.
But Bobby's very close to dying to this Ishkana activation as well.
Liliana ticking down once more.
Yeah, Liliana's been great this game.
Yeah, she's drawn how many cards?
She's drawn like 3 extra cards, something along those lines.
Okay, and Emrakul the Promised End is a pick.
Whoops.
And there you go.
A 6-mana Emrakul. You do not see that very often. Yeah, artifact, creature, planeswalker, land, instant, sorcery.
Let's see if there's anything Bobby can do about this. Yeah, it looks like he was out of counter spells. And even that's not even clear that would be good enough. And Christian Castro takes the first game here. Black Delirium doing exactly what it wants to do. I really hope that we get to see some blue-black summonings in action, though. Yeah,
it would be nice to see Metallurgic Summonings do its thing. And had Bobby, like, one of those turns on turn 5 or 6, just tapped out for summonings, because he never drew one, but, like, had he just played a summonings, and then the game proceeded kind of the way it did, he might have been able to kill Christian before Emrakul came out.
I guess it's really nice with some of the... Because a lot of these counterspells actually have high CMC, so... Yeah, getting a 3/3, getting a random 5/5 with Confirmed Suspicions.
Oh, yeah, Confirmed Suspicions becomes nice once you have Metallurgic Summonings out.
So moving on to our next match, we have Ari Lax versus Matt Severa, and this is Jeskai Control versus Mardu Vehicles. Now, both players are currently at 9-1, and Ari Lax is up a game. We actually got to do a deck tech with... Well, I got to do a deck tech with Matt Severa yesterday. So if you tuned in this weekend, there's a chance that you will have seen it or you'll have a chance to see it.
He's got the Royal Sampler of Fastlands there.
Yep.
The Inspiring Vantage, Spirebluff Canal, and Concealed Courtyard, all working together to provide the 4 colors of mana that Matt's interested in.
That Immolating Glare takes care of the Veteran Motorist and Athalia to follow up for Matt. Land from Ari, pass back to Matt.
And Ari's playing a pretty cool deck, one of the few decks that, can actually play like cards like Fumigate, which is a nice sweeper, especially since people are not really used to playing around sweepers at this point in the format. Radiant Flames being another one.
Does he have both?
Yeah, he's got 3 Radiant Flames and a Fumigate, and other than that, he's a kind of a torrential Gearhulk based Jeskai deck with Glimmer of Genius and a lot of other cheap instants that interact with the opponent. So,
how much do you think this favors Ari?
I do like a lot of what Ari's deck has, especially the 3 Radiant Flames does some work, but the card type Vehicle is such an effective anti-control card because the vehicles are just priced to move, and they also play around sweepers very well. So, especially since the Mardu deck does have a pretty good selection of sideboard cards, based on the fact that it's 4 colors. So, I like the combination of those, plus Scrap Heap Scrounger, which we see in play right now, that does a pretty good job of fighting against control decks.
Yeah, so the Void Shatter does counter the second Scrounger. But Matt continues to add to his board, and he has the first Scrounger now, too.
Void Shatter is a good answer to Scrap Heap Scrounger. I will give it that.
It's funny, I feel like a deck like Mardu Vehicles usually is something that's not well positioned against control, right? You're just a try to go fast deck. But like you mentioned, there's so many cards here that have a good amount of resilience versus control. Vehicles being a big part of it too.
in this format, control decks are rewarded for playing just tons and tons of creature removal. So a lot of aggro decks are going to suffer against a deck full of cheap removal sweepers and torrential gearhulks. But yeah, a lot of these aggro threats really are resilient, and that makes Control's life a lot harder.
Well, Matt has a very good one here. He was able to resolve a Gideon.
Gideon is among that category. I mean, Gideon's just one of the best anti-control cards that's been printed in the last couple of years.
Into 2 open blue mana, which looked like Ari might have had a negate or something. This is post-board also. What happens to these games post-board?
Ari,
decks, excuse me.
Ari does have 1 negate in his main deck. He doesn't actually have one in his sideboard. Negate also kind of funny that it's actually good against Mardu vehicles because it can counter vehicles and Gideons. So negate being good against aggro is not a common situation. But other than that, I mean, Ari can board in Spell Quellers. Like, that actually seems like it has some value as well. Linval the Preserver is a good way to catch up.
So Gideon ticking up and attacking Nahiri. So Nahiri was able to take down one of the Scroungers, but had no other protection. Inventor's Apprentice, and back to Ari.
Yeah. If I'm Ari, I'm not that worried about, the turn 6 Inventor's Apprentice without any artifacts in play. That is not the most intimidating.
What about the rest of the board, though?
Well, Gideon is a problem. I will give him that. So, especially since Ari has been somewhat constrained on mana this game. He's got the 1 Ether Hub as his only red source with 1 energy, and he looks like he has drawn a land here, but before that he wasn't able to play like something like Torrential Gearhulk, even if he had one.
So he's going to main phase his Glimmer Genius. He liked both cards. He snapped that off.
Hey, look, a 4-mana instant speed divination is not a bad card.
So let's see what Matt follows up with. Okay, that's an artifact for the Apprentice. Smuggler's Copter. Gideon continues to tick up, and in comes everything. Harness Lightning takes down the Apprentice.
Harness Lightning's also mana fixing. I mean, I guess in this case it's not generating energy killing the Apprentice, but
that is kind of funny though.
There are points where it needs to fuel that Ether Hub.
We've seen multiple times the Harness Lightnings be cast just for the energy.
Slightly more common play when Aetherworks Marvel is involved, but hey, I mean, this deck might do it too.
What answers does Ari have for this Gideon? He's had 2.
Torrential Gearhulk is his best answer, but if Matt has too many blockers, then it's going to be hard. Also, Ari might have to play Torrential Gearhulk in order to block a Gideon immediately.
All right, and that's going to do it. So Matt Severa is going to force a game 3 here, and also our main match is going, so let's hop back and see what's up. So it's a Transgress a Mind and wait.
Is that just all lands?
Is that all lands?
So it looks like Christian Castro mulliganed to a 6-card all-land hand and then drew another land.
Oh, no. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, that is not a common sight.
Also, because you look at the border, you're like, maybe they're all lands, but maybe I'm just missing something. It's just straight up all and an Emrakul.
Well, if Christian just draws all lands and just plays a turn 13 Emrakul, maybe he can win the game.
Okay. Wow, that was an interesting sequence of events right there. Let's just put it that way. All right, so if you're Bobby, you're feeling pretty good here.
Oh yeah, because Bobby has his engine going. He's
well, technically that's not a land, but it does get him 1.
Look, Christian does not want to miss land drops, and he's in a position to make sure he never does.
All right, so that Pilgrim's Eye gets a swamp.
The really thing is, the big question is, does Bobby have the Glimmer of Genius?
And he does.
All right, let's find a summoning, shall we?
Well, there's a Gearhulk.
Gearhulk is also great, especially in this position where you're under no pressure and have a Glimmer of Genius to flash back.
Don't be disrespectful to the Pilgrim's Eye.
Okay, you're under very little pressure.
Okay.
Does that play?
Yes, it plays. That little guy's just trying to clock in.
Yeah, just doing as much work as possible.
A hard day at work. All right,
and
Pilgrims are getting in. Yep, on the board, down to 19. Ooh, looks like Christian drew something. All right, so he drew a Grimflayer this turn. That gets immediately grasped.
Yeah, Grimflayer hitting would have been pretty nice given the Emrakul in Christian's hand and how much time he might have before he has to cast it, but it's gonna be many turns before it comes out.
How about a hissing Quagmire instead?
Well, I guess that helps the beatdown plan since Christian drew a second one and then gets to attack with the first one, I guess.
Yep, and so second hissing Quagmire makes an appearance. Bobby's not interested in dealing with any of these cards. Yep, instead he's just going to choose to keep drawing more. Torrential Gearhulk, flashing back that Glimmer. All right, let's see if there's a summonings there. Didn't look like it. Come on, summonings.
I mean, I think Bobby can win this game off just Torrential Gearhulks, but obviously we would much rather him
We're
play
talking
his
about style
Metallurgic
points at
summons.
this time. All right, transgress, and oh, there goes Umbracool.
That's just the best thing you can hope for is you transgress, take their one spell, and see 4 lands in their hand.
Well, he knows that some of these have just been drawn too, so he knows that at most there's like 1 or 2 cards he doesn't know about, which could just be like a removal spell, or in this case, an Umbracool, you know?
Yeah, and that does protect the Torrential Gearhulk, but it is funny that how it ended up and the good news that Bobby saw.
Yeah. So here, Christian drew a transgress for this turn. Let's see if Bobby is okay with that. Only 1 target.
Well, Bobby's actually kind of out of gas, too. I mean, granted, he's got the
He
5/6 Gearhulk just smashing, but he's got 3 lands and a grasp.
This is also after he's cast 2 Glimmers in the last couple turns.
Yeah, I guess he scryed 2 lands to the bottom last
Yeah.
time, and he scryed 1 card to the bottom the first time. So he scryed 3 cards he didn't want to the bottom and still ended up here.
You're a control deck, you play a lot more lands too. It's part of it.
The good thing for Bobby is a handful of Grasps of Darkness does mean that Hissing Quagmire is not going to be able to block the Torrential Gearhulk anytime soon.
Ether Hub, get some energy. All right, so here's in Quagmire attempting to block, but it gets grasped as well.
Seems like it'd be painful to grasp a Hissing Quagmire. Like, that doesn't seem very
It
pleasant.
doesn't sound good, no. You gotta do what you gotta do, though. And Christian has drawn another land, yet again.
A common misconception is that if you keep a land-heavy hand, it's fine because you have fewer lands left in your deck. You're not going to draw that many lands. Isn't it not really how probability works? There's still plenty of lands left in your deck, and Christian, he's not drawn well this game, but he's not drawn insanely badly either. He just, kept a land-heavy hand.
Land for Bobby. And I think he has 1 grasp left in his hand.
Yeah, it looked like he drew a second. Oh, maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, the Gearhulk's not attacking.
Oh, wow. That actually is going to work out pretty well.
Oh, it's a traverse.
With exactly Delirium there.
Wow.
Emrakul's gone for good, but Traverse can still hit a reasonable amount of targets. Noxious Gearhulk can eventually kill that Torrential Gearhulk. Potentially Mind Rock could go over the top, but
How
looks like
many Emrakuls does he play? Just
the one.
Okay,
Well,
so
one in the sideboard. It's possible that Christian has sided in a second Emrakul.
Well, Christian has chosen that Gearhulk.
When Gearhulks collide.
Yep. Yeah, and Bobby is definitely not okay with that. Immediately gets spell shriveled.
Pretty clutch right there. Making sure you have Gearhulk advantage is pretty good.
But we got to see the power of Traverse the Ulvenwald. It was legitimately very good. Hissing Quagmire, not so much. After the Quagmire, we're going to see a pass back to Bobby.
And I think Bobby has found a murder, so he could attack into Quagmire number 2.
There's been 3 total, right? So there's a second one.
Oh, he also has a grasp? All right.
So he just chose not to do that last turn. Yeah. So this drops Christian down to 5. All right, Grimflayer can be a blocker. Not a great one, but it's a blocker.
No, if you have to throw Grimflayer in front, you're not doing great. And actually, Christian, between Murder for Hissing Quagmire and Ruinous Path for Grimflayer, is actually in a position where he's going to be able to close out this game, unless Christian has instancy removal, which he does not.
And let's see if Bobby can close out the game right now.
You're also in a spot where you could go for the kill, but you don't need to necessarily. I mean, I think that it makes sense here, given that there's just not that many cards Christian could have that you would care about. But there's certainly an argument for not killing Grimflare. Though I guess once you've tapped out for Hissing Quagmire, at that point you should just go for it.
Yeah, so that is what he's going to do. Murder takes it down. Grimflare needs to jump in front. And now Christian, no Quagmires, no creatures left. An Evolving Wilds, and that's game. All right, so these players are going to go to game 3. That was a very strange game from the start.
Yeah, there was some weird stuff going on there. Just the fact that Christian was just very heavy on lands the whole game means that he had to try to win the game with like 5 spells or 4 spells, and just that's not enough to get the job done.
Luis, taking a look at the sideboards here, how do you think the players are going to board?
Well, Christian actually hasn't seen a Metallurgic Summoning, so he might not even board in
that's weird. You're
Appetite
right.
for the Unnatural or Lost Legacy, anything like that. Pick the Brain does seem like a pretty natural addition just against control decks in general, especially since you've got removal, which is just not looking all that great. Ob Nixilis Reignited, Nissa Vital Force, another Emrakul. These are all pretty good options out of the black-green deck. Moving over to the Metallurgic Summonings deck, seems like Bobby mostly has anti-aggro cards in his sideboard, so besides maybe a Summary Dismissal and some negates, I would not expect Bobby to side in all that much.
All right. Moving back to game 3 here between Arilax and Matt Severa. This is Jeskai Control versus Marduk Vehicles, and players are here on game 3. So players are both 9-1. Looks like Matt's been able to resolve a Gideon, and there's also a Scrounger here in play. It's like a couple of creatures have died in the process. There's some Immolating Glares in the graveyard for Ari. All right. So Matt Severa safe there from having to sacrifice a Gideon. Scrappy Scrounger takes one for the team.
Yeah, that worked out really well for Matt, and it looks like Gideon is just going to continue to pummel Ari into submission. I mean, the control deck just has so much trouble.
There you go, and you see the handshake, and Matt Severa improves here to 10-1 at Grand Prix Denver. Is that what you would expect out of that matchup?
Yeah, in the sense that a resolved Gideon is going to be really hard for Jeskai. So I don't know who's actually favored in the matchup, or if there's a significant favorite in either direction, but I know that Gideon's effective against control, and I know that Matt just continued to resolve Gideon and plus him every turn until Ari died.
Yeah, I actually was talking to Matt during his deck tech about, what are the matchups you really want to face versus which ones you don't. And most of the time when you talk to players about that, they have very clear ideas. Like, I cannot beat this deck no matter what I do, or, God, just let this field be all, vehicles, and I'm just great against them. And Matt felt like he was right in the middle. He felt like it was almost like a Abzin or Jund in Modern, where he was just like, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of 50-50 against everything. Nothing is too bad. Nothing is too great. I just, have solid removal and solid creatures, and I have a good sideboard plan. He can definitely go a lot bigger in the sideboard, and he also can board into a lot more removal in the sideboard, so can kind of adjust depending on what he's playing.
Yeah, cards like Sky Sovereign and Gideon, Declaration of Stone, these let him transform his deck into a more controlling deck.
Yeah.
The first part of your statement that you ask average Magic player about matchups, and they're like, oh yeah, I can never lose this one, or I can never win this one.
Yeah.
Do you think that Magic players are prone to hyperbole in spots like that, or no?
I don't know. I'll throw it back to you.
They're just all.
So you're the expert analyst. Tell me.
I thought you were going to say I'm the hyperbole expert, because
that also.
I am the best at hyperbole.
You are.
One thing that's very easy to do is to look at a matchup that's favorable for you. Like, let's say you're Aetherworks Marvel and you're playing against Black-Green, and just be like, yes, this matchup's great. It's my best matchup. It's unlosable. When you're really like 62% against it, there's just very few actual 80%, 90% matchups in Magic, but people tend to look at a favorable matchup and just kind of conflate that with an unlosable matchup.
What do you think is the best way to talk about that in terms of testing? Because it's really easy to just use hyperbole in that sense, and Magic players are prone to saying things like that. But if you're trying to quantify a matchup that's like 55-45...
It's really hard because people speak, kind of like the different languages when it comes to that. Because once, someone might say like, oh, that's a really good matchup, but what they mean is like it's a 55% matchup.
Right,
or
that's what I mean.
Someone might say like, oh, this matchup's really tough, but it's actually like not that bad. It's just hard to play. So you have to make sure you're using the right terms and you're kind of speaking you're on the same wavelength. I think what's important is knowing what the relevant interactions are, how the matchups play out, and then trying to get a sense of who's a favorite without worrying about exact percentages, because it's really hard to nail those down.
All right, so we are underway here. Game 3 between Christian Crosster and Bobby Fortinelli. Looks like nothing on 2 for Christian. Nothing on one either. Oh, and that Grim Flayer is so late to this party. I guess it's only a little bit late. It's like a half hour late to the party or so.
Yeah, fashionably late, actually, is what you would say.
Liliana, the last hope, and immediately...
That's an aggressive Liliana.
Yup. 2 cards, nothing to return.
Speaking of drawing a 2-drop on turn 3, I think Bobby drew a negate on turn 3, and he would have loved to negate Liliana.
I'm telling you, everybody got RSVPs with weird times.
Yeah. Everyone's just strolling in when they feel like it.
So Grim Flayer making an appearance here on turn 4 instead of 2. Liliana continues to tick up. And that Grasp takes down that Grim Flayer. Land for Bobby. I wanted to see a pass back.
And this is the turn where Bobby really wants to cast a Glimmer of Genius. We'll see if he has access to one.
So Christian just drew a really nice one. He just drew a Pick the Brain.
And Christian right now has Enchantment, Sorcery, Creature, and Land. So he's hit Delirium with Land, Creature, Enchantment, Sorcery, Planeswalker.
Yeah, that was an aggressively used Liliana.
Yeah, he just -2, +1, -2. So, and here, so the way people sequence spells shows you very clearly what they want to resolve. So by playing Grimflayer first, Christian was hoping to bait out a counterspell so he could resolve Pick the Brain.
Yeah, so he tried to, but the negate sees the Pick the Brain. So no Pick the Brain for Christian, but he does get that Grimflayer on the board. Oh, all right, finally we see it. There's Metallurgic Summonings.
All right, so Bobby tapped out from Metallurgic Summonings, didn't do anything to affect the board this turn, but Christian now is kind of under the gun where every turn from now on when Bobby casts a spell, he just gets a free creature, and that's just going to put a lot of pressure on Christian.
All right, so another Pick the Brain. It's funny, if Christian would have had to Pick the Brain at any point in the previous games, he might have been able to see what was actually going on in Bobby's deck.
Yeah, and there's a decent chance that Christian does not know that Metallurgic Summonings is kind of the theme of the deck, because Bobby didn't play one in games 1 or 2.
No, it looks like he's named Gearhulk.
And that's problematic for Bobby, because next turn he really wanted to go Gearhulk Grasp, get a 5/6, get a 2/2 off Summonings, especially since Christian doesn't have to play into Spell Shrivel. Spell Shrivel's a very bad card for your opponent to know about. So despite having a Summonings in play, Bobby needs to top deck spells that he can play. Glimmer of Genius would be probably his best draw right now.
Getting an update from Maria, who's over on the floor. Castro was apparently very surprised about the Summonings.
I mean, this looks like a blue-black control deck. We've seen that in the feature match before. And
this is game 3, too.
And this is game 3. You would have expected to have seen a linchpin card like Summonings beforehand, except it just turns out Bobby was able to, win a game without it, which is more impressive. He's able to lose a game without it, but that's less surprising.
And the players transgressed each other multiple times as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of information seen. And that's the cool thing about Metallurgic Summonings. It's a build-around, right? You have to build your deck to take advantage of it. But the cards that make it work are just spells. So they don't really give a clue that you actually have Metallurgic Summonings. Except Confirm Suspicions. That gives you 3 clues.
Bobby drawing a Swamp for the turn.
Yeah, and Christian can now just be like, animate Quagmire, attack for 6, just don't play into Spell Shrivel, and put Bobby in the kind of spot where he's just getting no value off his Metallurgic Summonings.
I think he drew a Traverse Sylvan, so if he wants to. Yeah, so here we go. Hissing Quagmire and Grimflayer getting in.
Imagine if Bobby drew like a Grasp and just goes like, grasp your Grimflayer, block your Quagmire with the 2/2.
Oh my god.
That would have just been grotesque.
Wow, he kept all 3 on top. Very nice. Follow up Quagmire. And let's see what Bobby does this turn.
Is that an Anticipate? Anticipate would be nice.
Is there any benefit to trying to ambush?
There is. Bobby has almost all instants in his deck, so I think
because that's a tell now, right? Because he's been tapping 2. I mean, I guess he could be bluffing, but
people really don't bluff like that very often.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, if you're Christian, do you now just worry that there's a 2/2 that's going to be in the horizon here?
I think so. I mean, he has to get a sense of how Bobby plays, but I think that he's got to, at least acknowledge the fact that Bobby could have a 2-drop.
Yeah, there you go. And here's a 2-drop. So Anticipate triggers the Summonings.
Ooh, does he have actual summoning
I think
tokens?
he does. Yeah. Nice.
Oh, is he going off? Does he have another anticipate there?
I think he might have found another one, yes.
He's demonstrated a loop.
Oh, I think it's murder.
That would also be great here. Killing Grimflare and getting a 3/3. I mean, this is how Metallurgic summoning snowballs. Like, not only did Bobby tap out for it on turn 5 and it did nothing, he also bricked on turn 6 and it did nothing. But despite that, once it starts to get rolling, he ends up in a spot where it just provides him a ton of advantage.
So nothing for now. The first token jumping in front of the Quagmire. Yes. Before damage, he did find a murder. Down goes a Grimflayer. In comes a 3/3. Okay, the Quagmire trades with the other token.
It does give Christian a window to resolve some of his spells this turn, like he can resolve a grapple or a traverse. The problem is Christian actually doesn't have a ton of lands because his Quagmire died now, and he knows about the Spell Shrivel in Bobby's hand. So that Spell Shrivel, despite him knowing about it, actually looks like it'll be a hard counter here.
Yeah, and this the summoning's token's actually just getting in there.
I was making little claw noises.
I saw. I try not to laugh.
I feel like no one ever says that to me. There's very little indication that anyone wants to laugh when I make most of my
ridiculous.
jokes.
Wow, so Bobby's just going off. Did he find a second summoning?
He did, because there's 2 lands and a summoning, so he might as well take the summonings.
Yeah.
The question is, does he just tap out for another summonings? Probably not with Spell Shrivel in hand, but it is tempting. Next turn, he can actually play his second summonings, just run up the score.
So it looks like Christian found a Gear Hulk, but he's choosing to take the land.
Especially against a Spell Shrivel, I think lands make sense. And Christian, he isn't short on spells. He's got 4 spells in his hand. He just needs to make sure he's got the lands to be able to deploy them.
All right, so Tireless Tracker. Yeah, and Bobby's just going to fire that off. Spell Shrivel, get another 3/3.
Spell Shrivel's not the kind of counterspell you wait on, especially when your opponent knows you have it. You're just like, all right, look, I know you have this.
Yeah.
Like, eventually, you're going to be able to blank it. I'll just use it.
Like, do you have any concerns about it being bait, like the Tireless Tracker is bait?
Yeah, you definitely do, because whenever your opponent plays a card into a counterspell they know you have,
about.
You have to think, do they want me to counter this spell? But I think Bobby came to the correct conclusion, which is you just got to use it. There's not a whole lot of advantage to be gained by waiting.
Right, and this time, resolving the Traverse Ulvenwald. Yep, and there's an Emrakul.
So we have sorcery, enchantment, land, creature, planeswalker, artifact.
Yep.
Instant. So Emrakul is castable next turn, presumably. Is there an instant? Yeah, grapple.
Yeah, there's a grapple.
So Emrakul is castable for 6 mana next turn. The thing is, here's the situation that I mentioned before game 1 where Emrakul could resolve here, and Bobby doesn't have a lot of ways that his turn get wrecked. Oh, did he just top deck?
Oh, that is savage.
Wow.
Transgress the mind? Get 2?
Yeah, that's insane. Transgress not only is 2 2/2s, it also strips the Emrakul out of Christian's hand and puts him in a position where I don't even know what he can play now. That Transgress was brutal.
I guess he could peel if he boarded in a second Emrakul. Then you're still dealing with all these summonings tokens. Yeah, this Grimflayer is intimidated.
Metallurgic Summonings, it is going off here. And actually, if Bobby plays another spell, he can then sack one of the summoning skill of 7 tokens and draw 7 spells out of his graveyard. That Transgress was just the best draw that Bobby could assemble.
They're getting paired together based on how big they are.
So 2 3/3s and 3 2/2s.
Yep. Liliana doing her best to stop this army.
Her best may not be good enough here.
She's more used to dealing with zombie armies, not these metallurgic summonings tokens. If you're Bobby at any point, do you just want to finish the game as soon as possible? Are you concerned about dying? You're at 10 life.
If I'm Bobby, I want to play this game for as long as possible. I really want to get these metallurgic summons going for all they're worth. In terms of strategically what the correct option is, Bobby doesn't have a spell in hand, and I think just he can just end the game in 2 swings. He's just going to have to go for that. I really want to see a metallurgic summons get sacrificed, but
I just wanted to see metallurgic summonings in play and
yeah,
go
that's
off.
probably asking for too much.
And we did see this.
Oh
so.
yeah, this definitely counts as going off.
Yeah, so Grim Flayer gets in front of the 3/3.
And thanks to Liliana, Christian doesn't die, but this is a pretty hefty hit to his life total.
And Christian now at just a mere 2. Can he draw anything?
So would a Noxious Gearhulk do it? He'd be at 5, and it would be a Liliana. Yeah, Noxious Gearhulk would be the kind of card he needs, but there's not a whole lot else that can get him out of this.
Yeah, so he's ticking down. 1, 2. Land on a Flare. Get back the Gearhulk. Cast the Gearhulk. Kill the 3/3.
So Bobby is going to need to draw a spell to finish off this game now. Because with Christian at 5, an all-out attack just does not do the trick.
He drew a spell.
Oh,
Yep.
Not only a spell, the spell.
Yes. Glimmer of Genius.
2 4/4s, and then almost assuredly find another spell based on the Scry 2 draw 2.
Another Glimmer and the land. So he says no to the land.
You definitely want Glimmer.
He keeps the Glimmer. Now draw the Glimmer and let's see what else he finds. A Grasp? Was it a Grasp of Darkness?
It is, and Grasp still doesn't give Christian lethal this turn, but it could set him up to win pretty easily next turn. Though just casting Glimmer also does that. I think Bobby is just going to want to wait a turn here.
So Christian continuing to grasp at every little corner he has and continuing to stay alive, but not actually progressing towards winning this game.
No, the Gearhulk stabilized if Bobby didn't draw a spell, but Bobby drew Glimmer, making 2 4/4s into another Glimmer, making another 2 4/4s, and then on his turn can cast Grasp and attack with 7 Metallurgic Summonings tokens. Christian's just beyond dead here. Even if he drew an Emrakul, I don't even know if that would have done it, but you know, there's no combination of other cards here that are really going to get him out of this.
Do you think that Emrakul back, the one that got transgressed, do you think that might have been enough?
It would have done some damage. I don't know if it would have finished the game, but I think it, you know, given how close Christian was to stabilizing, Bobby needed to draw a spell there. Emrakul would have just given Bobby fewer turns to draw that spell.
Mm-hmm. So Christian considering his options here, trying to stay alive. Is he firing off that transgress? Oh, this is not going to go well. Glimmer of Genius.
Yeah, and Christian has to know he's dead. And wow, Bobby brought a lot of Metallurgic Summoning tokens. That's called preparation. How often do you need 7 tokens to finish the game?
I'm sure he play tested this, and hey, I mean, he has 3. They stack really well. I guess the games don't usually go this long. Maybe he gets another control deck. I'm curious to know how many he has, actually.
Yeah. What's in that box? What you got in that box?
Grasp, and transgress. Christian continuing to look at that grapple with a past, but it's not enough.
Christian's just into like,
Yep.
I can't believe I'm losing the Metallurgic
yes.
Summonings mode. He's definitely not, knows he's dead.
Accept your fate moment. It is exactly like that. Wow, what a sick match.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. Metallurgic Summonings waited till game 3 to go off, but go off it did. And Bobby Fortunali advances to 9-1-1.
All right, and that's going to do it here for round 11. We still have more Magic, so don't go any